Here on the third chain, working the Rattlesnake Reef all the way down toward Cedar Flats, all this area out here. So you know, at the at one point during our last week, we had a big old bull tide that pushed a lot of extra water in here. But that little cool front that we had blow in toward the end of the week pushed all that water right back out. So we were right back into our negative tides and have not recovered from that yet. We're still hanging with lots of negative tides in lots of areas. So we were a few weeks ago. So again, once we kind of figured out the pattern with all the extra water in play, because it scatters our fish for us. So we had to figure out that pattern. That took a few days, and by the time we got that nailed down and kind of got a game plan for that, then the water pushed right back out. So it's pretty easy to do. So there's going to be transition days there where the fish are still going to be somewhat scattered until they start to concentrate into those deeper guts or channels or passes, if you will. And that's kind of been the pattern in which it has developed toward the end of the week and in the early part of this coming week. High winds took place, a lot of wind in play, so you had to really be smart about where you fish, because unless you found some really protected water, a lot of the water was beat up, man. It was just dirty as it could be in a lot of places, so you had to adjust for that game plan as well. So these southeast winds that we had, and of course there for a few days we had northwest, northeast winds that kind of kicked in there. But we spent some time here on the Cedar Flat shoreline, all this area in here. Some of us called it the runway, if you will. You got a nice little edge that's out there, and when that water drops out of there, those back lakes really dump a lot of water. So we were just fishing these edges out here on Cedar Flat and on the runway and all the way down toward the mouth of Cedar Bayou. A lot of this area you're going to have to drop your boat pretty far out and then just kind of wade into it, which we did. Throwing a lot of different baits. We're in that big moon right now. Toward here in probably another 5 to 6 days, we'll be on the back side of that big moon. So right now, my suggestion in what we've done, we pretty much threw anything that was 4-inch or less as far as baits go, and that bowled pretty well for us as far as consistently catching fish. The burner shad by down south was probably the most bait that we threw as far as size wise in the past week, especially around that big moon. A couple of colors three colors that really stood out that was really producing for us. Purple Rain did really well. Twisted Tea did really well, and then Big Papa did really well. And then, of course, there was other ones that were sprinkled in there. I think Bone Diamond had some pretty decent production that came along with it. The OJ flavor, which is a really bright orange, had a little pretty good productivity that came with it as well. But it did well in the really dirty water too. So you just might want to roll that up and put it in your back pocket, just FYI. And then, of course, our Little Johns, we were throwing those primarily. Didn't throw the XL, just to stick with the Little Johns, and that was pretty much primarily the name escapes me. It's a new flavor that MirrOlure has come out with the Little Johns. It's a purplish, not the Purple Demon. It debuted at the fishing show in Houston back in February, and it did really well, of course, with the watermelon red as well. And then, of course, we threw some knock and tail lures that were in the Rogue flavor and the greenback. Those were the two flavors that did pretty good that. And then we sprinkled in some topwater bait here and there. Did pretty good. Had some pretty good opportunities with that, especially down in here in this big flat that comes around that point. And then, of course, we worked a little bit over here on the other side, on the Matagorda side of Cedar Bayou, and worked all this area back in here. So, mainly we're staying in that knee-deep water, and we were working that area, and then just kind of worked the potholes, worked the edge of the grass line, little drop-offs, and that's, primarily we were finding our fish. So those the majors and the minors where we were predominantly catching our fish in and around those time frames. So wherever you may be fishing in this upcoming week. Just keep that in mind. I talk about the majors and minors all the time. It gives you your best opportunity, especially on a slow day, because there was a couple of days where we had to really grind to find it, but when we got in those bite frames, that's when our opportunities got a little bit more. So anyhow, pay attention to what your weather patterns are going to be this upcoming week. It looks like it's going to be a pretty interesting and a week for us. Looks like some good temperatures. Water temps are continuing to rise back up. So take all that into account and have yourself a great week of fishing. Over here, Super Flats, right there off the Lydian Channel area. You know, we're working all this edge out here. Again, we lost a lot of water toward the end of the week, and so you know, it puts us right back in the same scenarios we were a few weeks ago when we had the same thing with the negative tides in place. You want to allow yourself to be able to fish a drop off, maybe a deeper hole or a gut or a pass of some sort. So what the Super Flats offers you, you've got a couple of different, or you've got more than a couple, you've got a few areas. You can get further out there on the bar that's close to the channel itself, and you can fish that drop out there. You know, you've got all kinds of different undulations that's there, shallower, that you've got potholes, you've got edges that you can fish that. And of course, you got out here, you've got a nice, pretty decent area the size. It's fairly deep, but when it's really low, negative tide-wise, you know, it fishes pretty normal. Then you've got this grass edge that's out here on the backside, on the point. Then you can work your way back down on this big, nice grass flat edge that's in here. And this one of the areas here where we were throwing some topwater baits here up on the top of that grass and getting some really good opportunities. A few hookups here and there on that. And then, of course, we had a few people that would fish the edge on the outside here. And then, of course, when you get down here in the little turn, you've got that deeper gut or hole that's out here. And we found a lot of trout that were hanging in there. And I've said this a couple of times in the past few weeks that our trout are really healthy this year. We should have springtime moving forward into the summertime should be really, really good. As far as numbers of fish that we're catching, we're catching lots of these fish that are in that slot, that are in that 15, 16, 17, 17s to 19s on a pretty consistent basis with a few overs sprinkled in there. And when I say overs, I'm talking in the restricted slot, the 20 to 30 inch. We're catching some 22s to 25s sprinkled in on that, in which that's all a great thing. Again, conservation is doing exactly what it's supposed to do for us. So it should give you lots of opportunities this upcoming week if you're fishing in this particular area or want to fish this area. And like I say, we just kind of work down this. You've got a little bit better grass. It's this way. You got lots of potholes that are sprinkled in there. Now, one thing that's kind of limits you to do if you've got more than 4 people in your party, it makes it a little bit difficult to fish because you just don't have enough room to spread out and fish it properly. So 3 or less, you're good. Then all back down here toward Blind Pass, I like the little island that's right here that's on the back side of it. It offers some great opportunities. It's got a nice little edge there and got a nice little drop off, and you got deep water adjacent to that. So we found some fish that were here up and down this. And then, of course, you've got the nice little grass flat that's on the back side on this end of Mud Island that's all back up in this area here. So this was another area that we were working plastics, working our topwater baits, double D in there in some of those areas like that. Of course, again, the double D's, it's a really terrific bait that'll keep you down in the water column. You just got to have enough to make sure that you can work it. If not, you're going to constantly get hung up with that bait. But other than that, it's outstanding bait. And then, of course, you've got your little drop-off edge that cuts back here all the way to the little cut-through. All these areas here, we found fish up and down these particular shorelines where this is all indicated. You have to spend a little time, be a little patient in there, which that's a big part of the fishing aspect of it, is your patience. If you got a little too anxious with that and you hopped around, then you're going to miss some opportunities. Again, what I mentioned in the last videos, the majors and minors, when we primarily were catching our fish. Now, we scratched fish out in between. Of course, the big moon really put a hindrance on that after about 10 o'clock when that big sucker was going down. We had early mornings were good, pretty consistent, pretty productive. But then we really had to work once the moon set and probably got down an hour past the horizon on us. So, but again, same flavors that we were talking about before: Purple Rain in the down south lures, Purple Rain, Twisted Tea, Big Papa, Bone Diamond. Those 4 flavors did really well for us. The OJ flavor That's what's really bright orange flavored. Did pretty good in the dirtier water. Watermelon red did good for us as well in the original size. And we were throwing some of the original size in these same flavors as well and doing pretty good. Another flavor that stood out was Copperfield in the down south original size lure. And then, of course, the knock and tail lures in mainly the Rogue flavor in the greenback did pretty good. The topwater baits, we had a variety. I think we had Mansfield knocker, had a she dog, we had mirror lure, the Spook Junior. Different size, but they're all pretty much in that 4-inch size. And the only one thing they're much bigger than that at all. It just didn't have much opportunity. And then, of course, your Little Johns, we were throwing those. So that was the main baits that we threw this past week on the trips that we had, and we're fishing on those days. So work these areas really well. Be patient with it. Be very surgical in the area. There's no reason to get in a rush because you'll find your fish that are back there. So just enjoy your time when you get to be out there. Over here in Pete's Bend, behind Rattlesnake, this area back up in here, and Rattlesnake Point as well. Like I say, when these lower tides moved in here to us and with us, we started working these edges out here, started working on top of Rattlesnake, all this area out here to the point. It's a really big area. If you haven't fished Rattlesnake, if you don't know that much about it, this is the time of year moving forward, getting into, as we slide closer to the summertime months, June, July. This Rattlesnake Point and this area here where the old Redfish Lodge used to set is pretty good. It's holding some fish as we speak. You've got guts that come through here, which we focused on. You've got a nice little point out here. Be careful around this point here. It's got a lot of concrete and rock and all that kind of crap that's laying around on that point out there. So you got to be careful when you're wading this. And then, of course, this front shoreline here, on where the Redfish Lodge used to be, this whole shoreline all the way down to Copano Ridge and that area back in here, really good amount of grass. You got deeper water, which we were fishing, and fish were holding on that. Now, the days we were having the northwest wind, it was really not a great position-wise to fish it because you had to kind of fish it funky-wise, but that's where coming around and getting on the backside of Pete's Bend, this area back in here around where the pier's at, and this area back here. Of course, there wasn't a whole lot of water. If you tried to work back onto this little cove that's back in here, it's kind of, you got a couple little back lakes that dump out into it, so we were just trying to prospect those areas, see if we found any redfish or anything that was holding back in there. Nothing great as far as size-wise fish go. We found redfish back in here, found some trout, occasional, actually a couple of flounder that were back in these areas here. So if that's your tea bag right there, it's a good area to kind of target. We'll get some water back. Like I say, we got these pretty strong south winds that are starting to crank on us right now, so that's going to push some water back in here for this upcoming week. So that should be advantageous for you. Now, we had some great opportunities to fish these, and we worked those areas on the days that we couldn't really work it. So when we had that north wind, we'd get up on this side here and work it back across the Rattlesnake Point area. So, like I say, we found fish out here, and it's the same baits. I don't remember us throwing any topwaters off the top of this, but we primarily just throwing plastics. Maybe the Double D were sprinkled in there somewhere with a couple of people. But, again, down south lures and the flavors that I mentioned, the watermelon red, the Bone Diamond, Purple Rain, Twisted Tea, Big Papa, those flavors did good for us out on these, especially with the water clarity that we had out there after being kind of beat up a little bit. Did pretty good. The Mirror Lure Little John in the watermelon red, and that Purple Demon, and of course that new flavor that they have, I forget the name of it. I'll have to remember that for next week. And then the Knock and Tail, primarily Rogue, was pretty good out there on this point as well. So again, you've got some opportunities with stuff, and then that whole Port Bay area, Italian Bend area. It's all been pretty good for the most part, but we just really kind of focused our area out here on the Rattlesnake area, just kind of see if we could target some trout, and we found what we needed. And so anyhow, I hope that y'all have a great Easter week this upcoming week, Enjoy your time with family and friends if you get to be out on the water this upcoming week. And y'all be safe, and we will talk to y'all soon.